We're back with Jeff Watanabe, founding partner of Watanabe Ing and Komeiji, and chairman of the board for Hawaiian Electric Industries. So Jeff, before break, you were telling us a little bit about your first involvement at about 27, 28 years of age on your first board. Could you continue telling us about how you got introduced to the nonprofit service industries?
Sure. If you get involved with an organization like Child and Family Service, which is kind of a womb-to-tomb kind of an organization, they have everything from an adoption agency to a program for the aged, you realize that not everybody's on the same playing field in Hawaii, and that we're all connected. Doing work with Child and Family Service, being on the board, I eventually became chairman of the board. You meet wonderful people. You get to see things in our community that you might not otherwise see, and you have a chance to make a difference. And that leads to other things. It leads to, for instance, I'll give you an example. The head of the Child and Family Service while I was chair was Patty Lyons, who has had a distinguished career in the social services. She later became the president and CEO of the Consuelo Foundation, which I now chair. So I've been working for Patty for probably 30 years in one way or the other. So because everything's connected, you get involved in other kinds of activities. It's also true that if you're going to be sitting on any kind of for-profit board, that one of the qualifications, I think, particularly in Hawaii, for doing that is also having a nonprofit reach. And so they both build on each other. There are very few members of Hawaii's particularly public company boards, but also private boards that don't also involve themselves in community activity.
Do you think some of that is because they have to, or do you think most of them get involved because they want to?
Yeah, I think it's a combination. I have a spouse, Lynn, who's very, very active as a volunteer in the community. She does it because she wants to. In the case of business people, and I won't speak for other people, I should just speak for myself, I think some of it is because in the service industry, if somebody who is a large client asks you to do something, you're much more inclined to do it. I kid around when I say this, but if a client calls me up and I hook into my computer system and I realize that this client has paid me a lot of money over the last year in fees, and he happens to mention the fact that he's concerned about the welfare of Koreans in northern New Jersey, I'm likely to be concerned about the welfare of Koreans in northern New Jersey, too. So, it works out.
You mentioned as sitting on the board for these for-profit organizations, you have a conscience, or, you talk about what you can do for the nonprofit sector. Could you give an example of how the relationship is between the for-profit and nonprofit organizations and how it would help each other?
Sure. I mean, for one thing, here in Hawaii, you have a very concentrated group of companies, of organizations that are all actively involved in helping community causes. But I'll give you a little bit more bizarre example of how these things work sometimes. I was hired years ago to represent a group that was interested in investing in a cable television company, which today is Oceanic Cablevision. The organization that hired me was a nonprofit out of New York that did children's programming, and were looking for revenue sources for their activities. Over the last 30 years, Oceanic has become a huge success. There was a lot of money made when Oceanic was sold to Time Warner. My client was the Children's Television Workshop, which produces Sesame Street, which is a nonprofit organization. The money they made off of the Oceanic sale became the basis of their endowment, which today drives a very, very large international television educational programming effort. And I continue to sit on the Oceanic board, and I've also now been on the Sesame Street board for probably close to 20 years. So there's a close association in many places where you wouldn't expect it between for-profit and non-profit activities, especially in a community like ours.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned for more on Greater Good Radio.